Hey there, guys. In this video, we're going to be talking about just Brave Exvius as a whole. Kind of like a nostalgia video, a discussion video where we just talk about, 8 years of gaming. What was good? What was bad? What did we like? What do we wish was different? All that kind of fun stuff. So in this video, to discuss just Brave Exvius as a whole, I've got someone that's been on a few previous news videos. We've got DBarry yet again. So you can go ahead and say hello, Barry.
It's funny that you say just a few previous videos. at this point, I mean, God, we've been doing this inconsistently since 6th anniversary, I guess.
A long time, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure.
I guess slightly before that even. Gosh, because what was my first banner with you? I think it was
You
it was a
know,
Jekt banner. It was Fabled Guardian Jekt, I think right before,
I can actually
or
look this.
no, it was Renoa.
I
Because
can
I
look.
wanted to be on Squall, and you boxed me out of that video because it was me, and then you forgot to write me on the list. So see,
Um, I've got you
memory never
on.
fails.
I've got you on week 3, February 15th of Aang as your first banner. Um, on my news
Oh no,
videos.
it certainly wasn't that one. It was well before that.
Oh, did I not keep records back then? I don't. I might not have.
See, and that's how easy it was to skip me back then and forget all about when I was supposed to have actually been there. No, I had wanted Squall. It would have been the first Neo Squall, and you forgot and you booked someone else. So then you handed me the garbage pail that was.
Oh, I'm
Oh no,
sorry.
it was Kuros and Ward is who I
No,
ended up being on.
no, my bad. I was searching from the bottom to the top. Okay, because the Aang was the last news video I had you on.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so no, here we go. May 3rd. I didn't write the year back then. May 3rd. Deep. Oh, I didn't write the banners back then either. You were on May
No,
3rd. DBarry. Oh,
I think it was Kuros and Ward because we had a long conversation about their TMR and STMR being weapons, which
mm-hmm.
was which was not it was not the Squall banner, but it's okay.
Yeah, back
I
then I.
certainly I'm certainly not petty or bitter. It's cool.
Oh, so it was 2022. I can see that here. 2022, May 3rd. Whatever banner that was your first news video with me.
Fact checkers, let us know. I'm sure you will.
But yeah, so as we know, Brave Exvius is coming to a close in a few months. That's kind of, old news at this point. It just came out, yesterday or so, but,
Hmm.
old news. We've kind of known in and out for months, honestly speaking. So, yeah, it's really no big secret that some players are more connected than others, and some of
Hmm.
them like to share information. And I will say, I've gotten his permission to share this, but again, not really a big secret or a big reveal. But Robot DA is one of the biggest supporters of Brave Exvius, and as being the number one supporter of the game, he got special VIP treatment, so he got more information than usual players. And then for other players that were, good friends with Robot DA, like myself, we got a little bit of extra information through him. So during this video, we'll be talking about a little bit of behind the scenes stuff that just, for curiosity, people can be like, oh, that's kind of neat, stuff like that. But yeah, so we kind of knew about
Hmm.
EOS coming quite a few months in advance.
Hmm. And being for those who don't know, or maybe this is the first time you're aware of my existence, I've been an admin or well, first moderator, then admin on the global page, the global Facebook page since late 2018, early 2019. So I mean, I've heard, I've had a great amount of information come through the pipeline for a long time, honestly. Granted, it's from everybody and their mother who thinks that they have a guy on the inside who has a friend who knows a friend who knows somebody who works somewhere or like bought a phone once and has information. But um, you can't ignore when you get 30, 35 posts in a day of people saying the exact same thing because they know a guy. Information comes around.
Mm-hmm. For sure. For sure. Um, so yeah, I didn't really structure this video in any specific way, so we're gonna kind of just like freelance it or whatever. as we bounce from topic to topic. So if it seems a little scattered, you can definitely blame me for not making this like a professional interview video or something. But we're going to just...
Conversations are more fun anyway. It's fine.
It is, instead of being on rails and stuff. But I did compile like a few just miscellaneous questions to start talking in advance. So one question that a few people have asked in comments and stuff is like, what was your most expensive banner ever? And I don't really mean cash spent. I mean like resources in game, which of course can translate to cash. But like, what is the hardest banner you pulled on by memory, Barry?
Okay, so for what it's worth, I will answer the cash question just because I'm pretty open at this point and none of it matters anymore anyway. My most expensive cash banner was the year, I guess, God, was it year 2 into year 3, I guess? The original Lotus Mage Fina banner. I was notoriously unlucky with pulling healers for the longest time. The entirety of the 6-star era, the only healer that I had on my account was Tillith, who coincidentally I pulled on my very, very first pull in FFBE ever when I first downloaded the game. So I'm not a day one player. And I relied on Tillith the entirety, all the way through when we first got 7-star units, and the only 7-star healer I had was Rem. So I had pulled really, really hard for Fina. And it just, back then we didn't have step-ups, we didn't have guarantees, there was no pity system, so it's just blind 5k pulls. And because of that banner, to this day, I have just created an absolute like trauma response dissociation anytime I see Kunshira, because I probably spent, back then 150, 160,000 Lapis, and I pulled 7 Kunshira and no Fina, which almost made me completely quit the game outright. From a more modern perspective, probably the more expensive banners I've ever had. There have been a few premium units that I've pulled to EX3, but I had to go double pity to do it. So, I mean, Sephiroth and Tifa both were double pity units. Gosh. Who else? There was another one more recently. I guess it doesn't matter. But premium banners I've been notoriously unlucky on just as much as I've been pretty lucky on a couple. But there's never been any point in the game that has stung as bad as Lotus Mage Fina did. Because I didn't get her, and I didn't have an Ayaka, and I didn't have anything. So I never could spam the old school Kiraja re-raise strat. And it made life so much more difficult than it needed to be in-game.
Wow. It's crazy. For me, I'm going to kind of like discount or ignore the anniversary banner where, again, we kind of knew EOS was coming, so I dumped everything. That was just like a wild, fire sale. So I'm not really going to count that one. But going for me by memory, the most memorable and painful banner of myself is actually, again, from either the first, maybe the second year. It was the original Gilgamesh banner. And that was actually way back when. I don't think I was recording my polls either. So it was totally off camera. But, so for those of you that were here from the first year, you might remember the whole Zidane drama, where they put him on a banner, but his rates were bugged, and they didn't compensate either. So I pulled hard for Zidane, never got a Zidane, never off-bannered a Zidane. So we're talking like the end of the first year. I'm like one of the only people on the server who have no sources of dual wield, back when it was a really big deal.
And for people who haven't been around long, you're talking about 3 stars a Dane, correct?
Yes. Yeah. His banner went in. It was like, and this is the first year. It was pretty bad back then. It was like a 6-unit shared banner. It was like all the 9 units. It was Zidane, Freya, Amarant, Vivi, like the 3-star units. And Zidane was on them, and it was glitched. So they were all normal rate. And Zidane's rate was at like the decimal point was 1.2 over too far. So like everyone else was like 1%, Zidane was like 0.1%. And they even confirmed, we're sorry, it was a mistake. And they may have given like 5 tickets compensation, but they didn't do any refunds or anything. So anyone who pulled for Zidane just got screwed, and you didn't get him. And myself included. And this is like way back when dual wield was a really big deal. Dual wield barrage was like the meta for the first year. I just couldn't do it. I had no way to dual wield in the game. So when Gilgamesh's banner came out, I'm like, he's got Genji Glove as a TMR. This is my chance to get a dual wield source. And he's a rainbow unit. This is like, a little bit further down. He's a 5-star base. So I go pull for him. Don't get him, of course. Rates were terrible back then. I used everything I had. All the savings, all the tickets, nothing. So for the first time ever, I spent more than like $5. Previously, I had bought they had these weekly deals, like $3 or $4. I had bought some of those. I had never bought anything more than like $5 in the game. So I'm like, I really want Gilgamesh. I was making videos at the time. No one really watched them back then, but I still posted them. I had like 5 views a piece or something. No one watched the videos back then. But I really wanted Gilgamesh. So I say, okay, I've played the game for a year. I really enjoy it. I can justify spending a little bit more. So I did I forget what the price was. It was like a $40 Lapis pack back then. So I bought $40 worth of Lapis.
6,000 Lapis one?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
All of it. Dumped, nothing. No Gilgamesh. So I get irritated, and I rage buy another $40 pack. And I did that 3 times, and after going $120, which is probably the most I have ever spent in the history of the game to today in one sitting. I've spent more over time, but I have never since that time spent more than $120 at a time. And I did it. And this is, again, I'm going from a $3 to $4 spender a month to $120 on a single banner and getting nothing. Nothing. So I was so infuriated at this point. I was going through the process of confirming another pack, buying again. Then I stopped myself, and I've never bought more than a $50 game in my life. And here I am spending $120 on a banner for a unit that I didn't even get. And I'm like, this is absurd. And immediately I shut the game down. Don't do the purchase. Shut it down. And I quit. I quit for a day and a half. I didn't log in for the next day. Broke my login streak for a day and a half. And then 2 days later, I'm like, I kind of missed the game. Let me log back in. So I log back in 2 days later. The login reward for that day is 2 tickets or something. I got 2 tickets. So I use those 2 tickets on the Gilgamesh banner. He pops out. 2 tickets.
Oh, jeez.
So this random ticket of Gilgamesh is basically the only reason I'm still playing today. Because I can almost guarantee you, if I had logged in again, and I would have still gotten irritated and probably have quit permanently at that point. But that just random ticket of giving me Gilgamesh saved the day. I felt better. I learned my lesson. I committed to never ever rage spending in the game again, and I stuck to that for 8 more years. And yeah, I continued to play for then. But that was my most expensive in cash banner, is chasing that dual wield materia or the Genji gloves for Gilgamesh, not getting him after $120, and then just getting him randomly on a login ticket a few days later after temporarily rage quitting. That's my most memorable banner. It's crazy.
I'm gonna be honest, your 120 makes my Lotus Mage Fina story really, really bad.
I mean,
for people who haven't been around that long, they're back before there were bundles worth talking about. All you could do was just buy raw lapis, and so that $40 bundle, I'm pretty sure it was 6,000 lapis flat plus maybe 2,500 or something. So it said. And then there were the $100 American banners, which gave you 18,000 lapis. And on that Lotus Mage Fina banner, I probably spent $500, $600, $700 to not get one at all. So again, at this point, pretty open book. It was at a point in my life where I really should not have done that, which is why I should have just put the game down and walked away. It would have been a much more intelligent financial decision. But the worst part was the mental gymnastics that I went through to get to that point, which is, this is a game that I enjoy. This is a game that I genuinely feel as though I want to support. And so I have no problem justifying this. because I'm not playing. When in reality, that's exactly what I should have not done. And now here we are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was I gosh, I dumped so much lapis into that to not even get a single one. Which is funny because even then, still Tillith was perfectly great as a healer. There's probably people listening to this right now who that Brave Frontier banner with Tillith was probably their most expensive banner because again, that Tillith was a 4-star base, and getting an on banner 4-star even all the way through the 7-star meta was almost impossible because of how diluted that pool was.
Yeah, because back then, today, when a banner has multiple featured units, each featured unit has the same rate. If it's a single unit
Hmm.
banner, it's a 1%. If it's a 3 unit banner, it's a 111%. Back in the day, shared banners shared that percent. So if the
They
rainbow
did.
rate was 1%, I remember that. So it was Lilith, Carl, and Sierra, I think it was. And so
Hmm.
Lilith was a 0.33% chance rate because she shared that 1% on banner rate with the Carl and the Sierra. And it was very, very hard to pull Lilith. I remember that. And
Hmm.
don't hate me, but that was one of my good banners. I got her in like 5 tickets. Like, I got her like right away for basically nothing. It was
That's
awesome.
incredible. But Tillith, the healer, Tillith, um, was the first. Wait, was she Brave Frontier? Oh God, now I'm starting to gaslight
Yeah, yeah,
myself.
yeah. She was a collaboration
Tillith
with
was.
Brave Frontier. Hmm.
Okay, yeah, no, Tillith on my first multi, which was the only multi. I literally did that pull, saw that I didn't get. Who was I pulling for at the time? Oh gosh, I can picture his sprite and I can't remember his name. The fire sword
Vargas.
protagonist.
Vargas.
Vargas, thank you. I want to say Varus, but that wasn't right. I saw that I didn't pull Vargas, and then I put the game down. I think I uninstalled it, and I didn't reinstall it again until the first Final Fantasy X banner with Tidus, which I again got on my very first multi that I did in game. So I had pretty good luck at the beginning of my tenure with the game, and then it all kind of fell apart from there for a while. I didn't know what I was doing in the game. I realized later on, as I started to get a bit more into it and a bit more educated with how the game worked, that I had a Wilhelm that I didn't know that I pulled. Um, I had Noctis back when original 5-star Noctis was absolutely stupid busted in the game, just for status effects, if nothing else, when nothing was status immune. I mean, it was. I kind of, in a way, feel like those were as rough as it was to get what you wanted out of banners. I kind of feel like that might have been one of, if not my favorite eras of the game, just because it was so pure, and you knew that you could make other things work. There, even the meta was good if you cared about certain things, but at the end of the day, you had no problem clearing content with 3-star base units back then, as long as you had dual wield barrage, especially. But it was so interesting how different it was.
The content in the early days, it was definitely different. It's hard to say better because it was definitely more basic. But on the other hand, different things mattered back then. Like you say, status
Hmm.
effects, did play a part. Getting ribbons for your party was like super whale territory.
Hmm.
So status effects mattered. Also, sustain was a really big deal back in the day. Like running out of MP was a
Yes.
major concern. So if a fight went more than 4 turns, and a lot of like the harder fights did, like you start to just run out of MP because back then no one had MP regen. That was like a
Hmm.
5-star introduction. No one regened MP back in the old days. So when you ran out, you were out.
Hmm.
It was
Gosh,
crazy.
and that's the other people forget. Trust Moogles didn't used to be an irritating resource. You didn't get them. You had to sit on Earth Shrine forever and set up some kind of client to run
Macros,
macros
auto farm.
overnight in
Yep.
order. Yep. God, I thought I was so smart the first time I figured that out, and then it promptly didn't work, and it was the worst. And I woke up in the morning thinking that I should have, you know, a full party worth of trust masters, and that had only gone up about 2% before the macro failed.
Oh jeez.
And then I was just sitting staring at that stupid dire rat as the auto tap just tapped. It's oh my goodness. It was so frustrating.
So just to show how dedicated I was back then, I used to TMR farm pretty religiously with the macros. So like at night, I would have my computer just auto farming Earth Shrine overnight, pretty much every single night. And the funny thing is, my like gaming computer is right by my bed in my bedroom, and it's got a pretty loud cooling fan. So I had that stupid fan having to blow a few feet from my head just so I could auto farm overnight long, every single night in Earth Shrine. Like I did it. I farmed my TMRs. It took something like 30 to 40 days per trust mastery to farm an Earth Shrine. Like it was pretty terrible back then, but I still did it.
Gosh, because you'd be doing that. You'd be farming for hours to get 0.1% every tick. And maybe if you're lucky, that would go off every 10 to 20 battles.
Yeah, the rate was a 10% chance to get 0.1% trust mastery. So what is that? Right. By math, 10,000 runs of Earth Shrine per trust mastery? If I'm doing the mental math really quickly, correct?
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, insane.
And that's assuming that you're 10% rolled at 10%.
Yep. It's ridiculous.
So I mean, it's so interesting how far the game's come. I mean, the whole point and the joy of beating the first season story was getting that stupid 100% trust Moogle, which was the most valuable resource in the game at the time, other than Lapis, of course.
I mean,
because then you had to sit and you had to plan and you had to figure out what were you going to use it on. Were you going to use it on your Onion Knight? Did you really need an Excalibur for your Orlandu? Did you need it for Veritas of the Dark? Like, who were you going to use it on? What did you need? It was the worst.
So, would it surprise you to hear that I was so excited to get that trust mastery Moogle from the finishing season 1, and because, like you say, it's so valuable. So, of course, Elixir Syndrome set in, and I didn't even use it.
Never used it.
Never used it. I was so happy to get it. Like, yeah, this is going to be so valuable. I can get anything I want. What am I going to pick? I can't decide. I can just farm an Earth Shrine. Why rush it with the Moogle? Let me just farm an Earth Shrine some more and save the Moogle for when I really need it. And that must have sat on the shelf forever. Never used.
And now it's probably sitting in the midst of the hundreds of 100% Moogles that we have.
I have so many
at this
Moogles.
Point. Oh, same.
Infinite.
It's so bad. Even STMR Moogles at this point, and now they're free with this event. I think if this would not surprise anyone who's known me for long enough. I believe I used that 100% trust Moogle on Tidus's Brotherhood.
Oh Lord! I mean,
it was a
good
back
weapon
in the day. Well, I was a Tidus main outright. I was a manual. To this day, I've never played FFBE on a computer except to try to set up my macro to Earthshrine farm. So I've always played on a phone, on a device, and I used to be a manual quick hit chainer with dual wield.
Oh,
and if you have ever wanted to frustrate yourself, please go try to even still do that now to this day, and just watch hell unfold.
I think Quick Hit wasn't Quick Hit the chaining family adjusted at some point to make it slightly easier. Am I wrong on that? I don't remember.
They said that it wasn't.
Oh.
It really truly never was. I think what they did is they extended the delay a little bit, but in reality, it never actually worked. I think they manually changed Octoslash, I think, at one point. Back when that was a chain family for anybody still watching. But Quick Hit, I mean, they just got rid of the idea of a 12-hit chain completely after a while, and now we're in the refined families that we have now.
The families, you mean like Bolting Strike and Extreme Nova, the only ones that exist? I guess
Absolute Mirror of Equity exists.
Yeah, it comes a little bit every now and then.
And Chaos Wave Awakening still.
Who uses that?
It's less viable.
Who uses
I do
that?
An Arena.
Oh, because you're still using like Saul or something?
I am still using Quadcast Saul, and I never will not.
Oh, Lord. So about quad. So what do you do about the auto cover? That's my. I tried Saul for a while, but then someone would have like either a unit on Alexander for the auto cover, or someone would just like passively auto cover, and they would survive. Like, what do you do when they survive?
So they don't often. Usually, as long as you start off with Bushido Freedom, it takes care of the actual covering that happens. When it auto covers, it really just kind of depends. So as long as Sauls have their TMRs equipped, you get the unlocked Quadcast for the first turn. If you went second and someone's auto cover kicked in, then you can still use the quadcast at the start of your second turn because you're basically getting 2 turns in succession. So it doesn't, for whatever reason, count as the one turn, quote unquote, that you get that quadcast unlocked. So you can just hit repeat and get lucky. If you don't do that, then honestly, then I'll just triple cast it and the fight still ends. Um, it's definitely less convenient if you can't just hit repeat, and then I have to remember that if I do that and then try to hit repeat the next morning, I'm not quadcasting anymore. Um, but honestly, it's not really that big of a problem, and for whatever reason, people never figured out that you just need as much HP as possible in Arena, and that's it. Because I guess people weren't paying attention back when people would bring, 4 or 5 7-star Kujas that would start off with their LBs ready to go and just wipe parties. So you needed 60,000 HP. As long as you hit 60,000 HP, you can survive anything that an automated computer throws at you.
I still recall those Kuja teams. Oh, what was the guy's
Mm-hmm.
name in Arena? Like he always had an irritating Arena team.
Oh God.
He used to always
Yeah, I know
refresh to be at the
exactly what you're
top of the
talking
ranks.
about.
Oh, I can't think of his
Uh-huh.
name.
I can't either.
Nami, I
It's
think
because I
it
think
was. Was
that
that it?
sounds right. That sounds right. I don't know. I blocked him out so much
There was
that I just
someone.
he's the
Yeah.
reason that I started to bring auto cover magic tanks to the fights, and then became the prevalence of your Aurora Scarf, dual wield, Biggs and Wedge.
Yeah, I remember for years he would always be like the terror of the arena. He'd always have this crazy team. Either it was like the 5 Kuja teams, or
Uh-huh.
like the 4 Liliths or something. After she came out, then the
Oh
Eldrins.
God, the
Like,
counter teams. Oh, those were
yes,
the worst.
it was always
Or
always
the
like.
the Lilith and Lucas team.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
That guy was dedicated too. Like he would swap
Yeah,
it
he
up
was.
too. Like you would
Mm-hmm.
expect to go in and like his team would be different than the thing. Like I can't imagine how much active time he spent adjusting and changing his arena teams and also refreshing to always be at the top of the rankings. So
Uh-huh.
you'd always see him when you go for number one. It was that dude was dedicated. I kind of felt bad when it seemed like he just quit because he just one year he just
Yeah.
like disappeared and never saw him
That's
again.
that's true. That's true. I mean, I think it was right around the time Neos got announced, actually, because I vividly remember him being another cancerous um, for Avalanche Biggs and Wedge team. God, those were the most frustrating. That's the moment that I started bringing a physical cover tank instead of a magic cover tank, because I could just get everybody's HP over 60,000, and then it wouldn't matter anymore.
Hmm.
Oh, God, Arena. What a shame they never did more with that.
So that is one thing that I, was able to ask a little bit behind the scenes a little bit, and I said, that's one of the things I said is like, why was Arena like nothing ever done with it? And the short version is like in order to overhaul that, it would just be like a massive project, and small changes or updates wouldn't really be that impactful. So they just kind of ignored it entirely, just
And,
because
and I
it would.
don't know. I don't disagree with that. There's nothing you could do that could have made Arena more fun, but they could have at least made it worthwhile after a point. Like how many Arena tickets do you have?
Oh, I have no idea, but tons because until the EOS stuff, I did not all my orbs, but I would use 20 out of 24 orbs per day. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like I've done arena a lot. So
Mm-hmm. And then the exchange or the tokens on top of it. I
hmm
mean, so many. If all they had done was updated those so that we could have at least gotten king pots, I think that all by itself would have made it more worth it.
would have. Um, I think probably the biggest issue with arena is the fact that everything is a one hit kill in arena. Like
Sure.
a 3-star unit can one hit kill Wilhelm. Well, I guess not because of the damage cap. But the point is, all damage hits the damage cap in arena. That's probably the core of the issue.
Mm,
Is there's just no gameplay to arena. It's just who has the most HP is all that matters.
sure.
So they would have had to adjust that. I don't really know of a way they could have made it challenging because it is still AI controlled. I'm sitting here thinking make it actual PvP, but there's no way that could work.
No, not with the way the game is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
Because then it's just who goes first.
yeah, I guess they could have done like a queue system where you queue into the arena and other people waiting for a battle would go together. But now I'm thinking about it. I've played games, and then of course someone takes their turn, and then they AFK just to troll you and make you wait. Even if you had like a turn timer,
Mm-hmm.
like a 30-second,
Mm-hmm.
they will literally wait the timer out just to be trollish. So that wouldn't be fun either. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that doesn't sound terribly dissimilar to how old Mobius Final Fantasy like raids were, which were super fun. But the second that guy AFK, then I mean, now just ruined your whole run.
Yeah, I guess I agree with the devs here. Is there's really just no way they could have,
Hmm.
in the format of Brave Exvius, made Arena worth it, so to speak.
Agreed. I just wish they would have updated or at least kept the rewards kind of fresh.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been the only thing that I could have asked for there. Because if we really get down to it, there's one unit that absolutely ruined Arena and would have made it so that as long as AI is involved, you could never truly win. And of
That
course, that is Paladin Sylvie.
Sylvie, yep, the auto raise.
Yep.
Actually, don't a few other units have auto raise too?
I mean,
From normal
probably.
attack, I think.
I think Sylvie was the first though, because not only it full raised your whole party, and applied re-raise to them, and gave them some HP.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that all by itself is such a broken. There's nothing you can do about it. That unless you're paying attention and fire off dispels, like I mean, sure. I mean, obviously there's ways around it because arena is not hard, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just that all by itself made it so much more difficult to ever tune playable content, quote unquote.
For sure, for sure. So, all right. So, I'm going to ask you another a question. So, over the course of Brave Exvius Global, we've had quite a few collaborations. Most of them
Mhm.
came from the JP server. A few of them were global exclusives. So, I guess what was your favorite collaboration, and what was your least favorite as
Oh,
well, on the
oh man.
global side?
So okay, so my least favorite, it's honestly it's such a bad reason to be my least favorite, but I'm throwing it out there just because when I first was really coming back to the game and like really starting to focus more on playing it consistently, right around that first Final Fantasy X banner, was not long. It was kind of in the middle of all the Ariana Grande collabs, and I just remember seeing Dangerous Ariana showing up on friends lists, and I was so absolutely convinced that those were like fake troll virus units that had like modded into the game that were there just to screw with your game, because obviously I wasn't paying attention, had no idea that unit in particular became the absolute bane of my existence, and I was convinced that it was a bug or a virus of some type because I was dumb. But so that for me, by a substantial margin, is my least favorite collab that they've ever done. If we're gonna talk about actual mainstream collabs, I will always and forever love Kingdom Hearts. I truly wish that Sora and Riku Neovisions had been more viable long term, but even just the art, the sprite work from 5 Star Kingdom Hearts, Cloud and Sephiroth, I thought those were fantastic. Routinely, the Kingdom Hearts TMR and STM, well, mostly the STMRs, I guess, they were so good and so viable and worth having that you had to. I mean, to this day, when I just helped you set that Esther for your big final boss rush extravaganza or whatever, we needed Kyrie's STMR to make that viable. Here today, what 2.5, almost 3 years after that collab came out, and so the Kingdom Hearts collabs for me by far were my favorite because I think they added the most to the game from a this is how long this can last perspective until the most recent Nier collabs. Because I mean, we'll always use A2's STMR even though the unit was a dumpster fire.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of funny about that Kyrie Estimar. So people that have watched my videos for a long time, you kind of know what went on with me in that Kingdom Hearts collab. Is when I was polling for them, I really wanted Sora and I really wanted Riku because they were at the time the units to have, and they had good STMRs at the time. And then
Mm-hmm.
Kyrie's STMR was considered good, but kind of whatever.
I thought it
Um,
was
and
great.
then and then when I was pulling, I pulled and then I got Kyrie as the featured unit instead of the other two. And I was like so angry at the time. I like screamed out a curse word and slammed my desk really hard. And I actually had to cut the video, the pull video, to cut that out because I was so pissed off when Kyrie popped out of that crystal. I was like furious. Like, why isn't this one of this three? And then, of course, as it turns out, Kyrie's STMR has been one of the most used STMRs I have used in this game. It is so good, and I did not know that at the time.
It's so good. I mean, it's the resistances, the stat buffs, and the LB fill. It's such a good catch-all. Like, any unit can find 2 out of 3 reasons to use this. It's so phenomenal. I guess the only unit that wouldn't use it would be, I guess, a physical tank mage who has innate full, like, 230% dark resistance. Would be the only unit in the game I could possibly think of that. And I don't think that unit exists, so everybody should use it.
And it's kind of funny, too, hearing you, then you said the 5-star, but when I heard you say the Kingdom Hearts sprites, my brain immediately went like, wait, what? Everyone hates those sprites because of the bubbles.
The Neo sprites I get.
Yeah.
5 stars.
But then you said 5 stars, and those, of course, were really good as well.
Honestly, I don't like the bubbles, don't get me wrong, but they were convenient for hiding units in Arena, which was a big thing for a while. That's why Bahimi was so great.
So just, as a slight, curiosity, in the past, I had asked, like, why did they do those bubbles? And I was told that was basically forced on them by, like, the Square Disney team or whatever. The people that own the rights to Kingdom Hearts, they said those have to be there. So the unit designers had no choice but to put those bubbles in. So don't blame the unit designers for those bubbles. That was forced on them by people that own the license to Kingdom Hearts. So for me, I think it's really no surprise here. My favorite collab was Parasite Eve. That was amazing to see them do. I think the collab was handled flawlessly. Well, I wouldn't say that. Okay, so a few things I would have done differently. For one thing, the Vision Card soundtrack I think should have definitely been the theme song, not that random song from no one even knows in the game. It should have been the theme song. Theme song is very recognizable, and that was a missed mark there. But the unit was great. I mean, Aya was amazing for months and months. That was great. And I guess my least favorite collab, I might, make some enemies here, and it's not even anything against the IP whatsoever, but I'm just going to say the Dragon Quest collabs, and the only reason is because they were so overdone, in my opinion, because I play the JP server as well, so I got these overflow of Dragon Quest collabs, not once, but twice. Like, so many Dragon Quest collabs. Even more in the JP, because Global didn't even get the Roto Dragon Quest collabs. But, like, Dragon Quest, easily the number one collaboration as far as frequency. I just got so tired of them, and as someone who didn't really play or read the comics of Dragon Quest, it's like I had no connection to them. So I just, like, roll my eyes like, oh, Dragon Quest, again, I don't want this. So I got tired of saying them. That's just, my personal thing.
I would like to go ahead and throw an honorable mention just for me, and I'm kind of disappointed with myself that this wasn't really my answer. I also, and I've always loved the IP, but the Star Ocean collabs are honestly like a category of what could have been the best collab for me, but just was not ultimately because of how everything was handled. So I mean, like, shout out Clake if for some reason he's still watching videos, because God knows his Fate pull video stream will live in infamy. But I love Star Ocean, and there's no denying how good of a unit Reyna was. But Star Ocean 3 till the end of time is one of my, like, if I was stuck on a desert island and only had a couple games, that would be one. And
just real quick, what system was that from? What game system?
That was PlayStation 2.
2? Okay.
And it very much, like, if you ever go back and try to, like, watch a Let's Play or try to play it yourself, it feels like a PlayStation 2 game. So, go into it with muted desires. But just The Fate being a pretty good unit was great, but then we got global original Sophia, and Sophia to me was the unit that I had to pull for. I loved Sophia. Sophia was actually a mainstay on my arena teams for a long time because for whatever reason her ability, her like fireball type ability, I guess, was a phenomenal finisher in arena once upon a forever ago. I'm sorry, I talk about arena a lot. God. Um but Sophia, I love it. That's one of my favorite games of all time. It was so great, and just when everybody got upgrades and Reyna became, the best healer in the game for a little while, including, of course, in arena, because why not talk about it some more? Sophia getting nothing, honestly, is probably the biggest reason why the Star Ocean collabs have just been completely deleted from my mind because it's what could have been and just what simply never was. It's really pretty sad.
Gotcha. So we talked about it briefly for a moment, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on Global's decision to do the real life collaborations with Ariana Grande, Katy Perry. Were there any others, or was it just those two? I think it was
I
just
think
those
it's
two,
just
right?
those two. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just curious what your thoughts were on those collaborations. Do you think they were successful?
Oh gosh, no,
N-
Addison
n-
Ray.
Oh, Addison Ray too. Yeah, Addison Ray. Not specifically, did you enjoy the collaborations? We kind of already covered. I mean, do you think it was a good business idea to collaborate? Because what I will say is, from what I've heard, is they had to basically pay pretty intense amounts of money to
Hmm.
these people to get the permission and the collaboration. So like Katy Perry, Ariana, Addison, like they had a good payday to do these collaborations.
Hmm.
Do you feel, without knowing the internal finances and all, do you feel that they brought in enough players to justify the cost of those collaborations? Do you think that was maybe a misstep? Just what are your thoughts without knowing, the actual finances?
So I understand. And again, being involved with the Facebook page, I do know that there are people who, as they've quit the game over time, said that they only first joined the game because they saw they were having a collab with Ariana Grande or with Katy Perry. So I have seen myself that those collaborations did bring at least a couple people to the game. Was it, justifiably enough financially? I'll probably never know. Um, Me as a player, do I think it was worth it? Honestly, no, because it was a lot of fluff for me. And from a business perspective, if we're really trying to grow a Final Fantasy mobile game in an original Final Fantasy world where we're really trying to tell an original Final Fantasy story and bring in existing Final Fantasy characters to this world to add its own degree of viability, then trying to incorporate aspects of the real world to me is very off mark from what the point of like an RPG like a Final Fantasy game really should be, because we don't need real world ties in to something that we're trying to potentially use for some type of escapism. Now that being said, if it generated them any type of a profitability, or even if they broke even on it, but it gave them more players to the game, kudos to them. I can have my opinions on the artists that they chose or the influencer that they chose, but if it got them what they were looking for, then fine. I'll never begrudge a business risk, certainly. Just
Hmm.
me personally, I think they were pretty widely off mark, with the only exception being that if they were going to do it, they needed to have that character add enough to the game to make it worth their existence in the game. Exception, of course, being honestly that free, like dressy Katy Perry and the AI Katy Perry's STMR, which was considered absolute first foremost whale tier, god tier for a long, long, long time. And so if they were going to do that, then that's the quality that they would have needed, or not even necessarily quality, but they needed to make it be more than just a passe, hey, here's this. People like that, right? It's like when old
Hmm.
people try to appeal to young people and think that they're talking about the youths, I guess. It very much felt like that type of move.
Yeah. For me, I personally really enjoy both Ariana and Katie's music. I listen, if their music comes on in the car, I'm definitely not changing the station. I really enjoy it.
Mhm.
But again, I did personally feel that they were just out of place in Brave Exvius.
Mhm.
Nothing against them as artists. I love them as artists, but I just don't think they have a place next to Cecil and Kefka in that
Mhm.
world. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But just like you said with the Facebook group, just since then, over the years, I have heard so many people say
Mhm.
they installed the game and they're still here, 4 years later, because of either Ariana or Katie collaboration. So it did seem to bring in players. Did it bring in
Mhm.
enough players for the cost? I have no idea. But did it bring in players? Absolutely. And a lot of them are still here today only because of those collaborations. The Addison and Ray
Mhm.
collaboration, I don't. I didn't really hear that many people saying I'm here because of Addison. That
Yeah.
said, she did come much later in the game's life cycle. Maybe that's why.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know. So
So that definitely felt like a little, too late type of deal to try to do that. Because if they were gonna do it, honestly, they should have just tried to throw a book at Taylor Swift. And God knows if the Swifties had come to FFBE Global, I promise the game would still be financially viable in some way.
would it though, or
So
would
yes,
or
I
would
bet it
Taylor Swift
genuinely would.
have taken all of those finances? Like, how much would that have cost? She's pretty popular these days.
She is, but what I will say, just for what it's worth, my fiance is a huge fan of her, so
I
there's
like
that.
her. I like her
Um,
too. I like her. I like Taylor's music.
I and I truly couldn't care less, but I do know just from what I've seen, she's a very like altruistic, good person, and so if she had any attachment to the franchise, that would have made that something that she would want. If even if they just reran it every now and again, and part of the agreement was some type of perpetuity every 6 months or so. I would be willing to bet you that could have potentially kept things floating for at least until the end of season 4. Now, granted, this is all hypothetical and we'll never know, but it could have been interesting to see, if nothing else.
For sure. For sure. So just to skip to another topic real quick. This one's being a little bit more negative. So one of the, I would say, big controversies that I feel like cost them some players, specifically some of their spending players,
Hmm.
is that whole Dark Visions thing where they had just multiple screw ups. Where the
Hmm.
one with the ads and they had the overflow bugs, so everyone got damage cap. Then they had to go in and reset everyone's scores on that Dark Vision. They fixed the overflow bug. But then that exact same Dark Visions, people were openly abusing the 7 unit bug. It was publicly
Hmm.
shared how to reproduce it, so lots of people were reproducing the 7th unit bug. And then their their answer was to just say, "Okay, it's a problem. We're not going to punish you. Everyone who used that bug is going to just keep their scores, keep the payouts, whether you cheated or not, and we're going to move on."
Hmm.
That I'm just curious your thoughts on it, but I will say I can point to that situation and give you multiple big spenders that like broke the camel's back and they quit. They quit based on that scenario because they feel like the situation was handled incorrectly. What are your thoughts on that whole Dark Visions drama?
There's not a question in my mind that was handled incorrectly. It to me was a series of knee-jerk reactions that then resulted in kind of like an obstinate child throwing your hand up into the air, slapping your knees, and saying, "Oh, okay, whatever, I guess." I, if I don't know the business implications of what I am about to suggest would mean, so we'll take this with an ample amount of salt. Um, in that situation, to me, the only really viable thing to do, honestly, would have been to give everybody proper, like actual rank 1 rewards and turned it into everybody gets 50,000 lapis. Now, some people will say, but that's what killed the game in the first place when we had the Facebook reward issue,
So,
compensation,
so
whatever.
real quick, can I cut in real quick?
Sure, sure.
I will say and again, this is, you can believe me or not, but this is from like behind the scenes information. I did ask what, why didn't they just give everyone rank 1 rewards? And the answer was, in summary, because the game was already starting to flounder a little bit because of other problems and starting to struggle to make enough profits to justify. So the idea was floated to just give everyone rank 1 rewards, but that was considered to be like a crippling blow if they had done that. You could argue that because they didn't, it ended up crippling the game anyway because people left. But it wasn't that they just didn't even consider it. They did consider it and discuss it. It's just that it was deemed that giving out 50,000 to the entire player base was just not viable. That would just harm the game too much at that point. So that was decided that they couldn't do that.
And I can see it. I mean, it's kind of a cut off your nose to spite your face type of deal. They made a decision in the moment. They did whatever they thought was right at the time based on the state of the game. And they probably, for whatever reason, did not think that was going to alienate their spenders who do shoot for top 10 in something like DV. Because let's be honest, if you are truly whaling in the game, you are doing it because you are looking for means of being the best. Because there are rewards that come with that. And so creating a situation where the sole real reason, like, let's be honest, people were not spending money on the game to support the game. They were spending money on the game to be the best or to have number 1 ranking in something.
Sure.
And so if we're ignoring that fact, I don't understand how you can ever create a situation where we're allowing other people who don't do that to claim rewards that are identical or slightly even potentially better than what your top spenders in the game are. And so what that did eventually, it really did cripple them. The combination of that one, and then the counter team nerfing and the 7-man issues, and just over and over again, and they were such stupid, repeatable copy-paste mistakes, it felt like, to people like me who don't necessarily know anything about it. I honestly think that handling of Dark Visions was potentially the beginning of the end. I don't think it was handled well. I think they could have potentially given everybody rank 1 rewards and just changed it to like a Vision World rank 1 instead of Dark Visions rank 1, but at least make it so that people don't feel like they're missing out on something. I don't know. There probably was no correct way to handle that other than wipe it over and over and start it again or close it completely. But then does that irritate the spenders even more? Because now they pulled for these units for this Dark Visions that they knew was coming from the JP side, that then they didn't get to use those units, because at that point, I mean, those are just refunds waiting to happen,
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the right answer to that would have been. I do know that just because we now have the benefit of hindsight, the way that it was handled was abysmally incorrect.
Yeah.
But they made a decision based on where they thought the game was, so I can't even necessarily begrudge them. It's just, it was not correct. And there's no arguing that.
Yeah, so that situation, I will say up front, I do not think a right answer existed. Your only choice was from all the bad solutions, you had to pick the least bad. I personally don't think they did. I think they picked one of the worst options. And I'll tell you the reason that I think it was an overall bad option. And this is coming from someone that never gets top 10 in the non-shared Dark Visions. Like, my usual Dark Visions, if it's not shared, is when I really try hard and or have just the current meta unit, I'll get like rank 70. Like, the lower top 100. Most of the time I was around rank 200. So this doesn't even affect me in the least. But I still got pretty frustrated and irritated knowing that the people that are usually in the top 10, and I'm pretty active in the community, I'm basically personally friends with probably like 7 or 8 of the top 10 usuals in Dark Visions. And knowing that all of those players that usually play, always play legit and usually get the top 10, they were all shoved down to the lower racks. They lost their rank. And the rewards, but honestly, these are legit whales. They literally could care less about the rewards. For them, it was the prestige of being in the top 10. And being taken away from that, knowing that people that cheated, some of them openly, a few people came into the Dark Visions Discord and openly bragged about cheating because Gumi wasn't doing anything about it. And they openly bragged, they rubbed it in the faces of the legit players that, haha, we're cheating and we're getting 50,000 lapis or, 35,000, whatever the top 10 rewards were at the time. And they were getting to keep that. And that just it really frustrated me. For me, it wasn't enough to quit over it. Whereas some of those top 10 players literally quit, and they cite the reason I quit is because of that situation. And they, people that spent however much per week are just no longer spending because it didn't happen. So what would I have done? My solution would have been a less severe of the rank 1. I would have, very much similar to what you said. And, sending out 50K to everyone is unrealistic. And without even hearing, the backroom talk, I still know that'd be unrealistic. But 5K to everyone, and everyone, at the very least, it's fair. No cheaters are not being rewarded more than legit players. Everyone gets 5K. It's a bad situation. Wash your hands of it. Be done. But at least you're not rewarding the cheaters. The rewarding the cheaters part is what really just dug into me as that should not have happened.
And the unspoken second part of what you just said is then you have to make sure this doesn't happen again. And the problem was that it happened again. That 7-unit bug was a repeat offender multiple times over. And they claimed that they knew it was present and were just hoping that it didn't get out. Come on, this is a multiplayer single player game. Do you think people are not gonna post on Reddit about this? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
It wasn't great.
So just to defend a little bit, I will say once the bug became widespread about how to replicate it, they did fix it. It was known, but not widespread. I personally did not even know how to replicate because I didn't really care. I never really looked into it. But from what I'm to understand, certain people knew about it and they had been using it in previous Dark Visions. They just didn't really publicize it. So it was kind of under the radar. People sometimes would see it happen. No one really knew how to replicate it, so including the developers, they couldn't really fix it. It wasn't until that specific Dark Visions it became so widespread. I think it even got posted on Reddit. I don't remember specifically, but it was definitely shared in the Discord how to replicate it, and that's when it became really widespread. But of course, when it became widespread, the developers also found out exactly how to replicate it, and therefore they were able to patch it later on. So they did fix it, but even so, it was still not handled great.
Yeah, for sure. Although, I guess since we're kind of on this topic of Dark Visions issues, what was your stance on, I guess, the pre-nerf counter team strategy?
Oh,
did you think it was good or bad?
Okay, so I didn't hate it, which might be controversial. I didn't really mind it. It's, I guess maybe because I'm not one of the top 100 players or the top 10 players, I didn't mind it as much because I basically using the strategy, I ranked similar to where I was ranking anyway without the strategy. It was just a different way to play. I certainly see the financial problems with that because Riku was so overpowering. She just negated all the newer units. So, why would you pull for, I don't know, Noctis, Cloud, whoever the hell was meta at the time? I don't know. But why would you pull for them who should have been the carries for the Dark Visions when Riku is still just better than those units? So, financially, I understand why they had to step in and do something, but from a gameplay perspective, I really enjoy weird strategies and outside the box, and just this really awkward, weird strategy of Riku being the tank with Oliver or Rivera, and then countering your way to a rank 1 strategy, or not rank 1, but a top rank strategy.
Hmm.
I thought it was interesting and quirky and cool. Um, that being said, it was the only strategy for what, like 3 or 4 dark visions, so like 4 months of just Riku. It did get a little old for me. So when they stepped in and nerfed it, I'm like, whatever. I'm tired of her anyway. So I don't know. I guess I'm not really that upset about it, but I wasn't sad to see it go either. So I'm kind of like almost neutral on the whole Riku thing. I thought it was
Hmm.
interesting and weird, but it kind of got played out after a while.
Sure. For me, I'd like to preface by saying that like I have nothing but respect and admiration for players like Robot DA and Ubonic and those guys. You know the ones. Um, my one thing that I again preface, if I wasn't lazy, which I am tremendously so, I would be surprised if I didn't have like relative to amount of units I have, STMRs, what have you. I would be surprised if I wasn't like a potential, honestly, top 50 account on the global server. I am just very lazy and I don't do anything on a PC and I don't do anything with macros. So I just don't put the time in to have my account be potentially as relevant as honestly it probably deserved to have been. Now, that all being said, my thing with the Riku strategy is probably opposed to a lot of people who would be, higher than whales, like I honestly am, or was anyway. I appreciated that strategy because it meant that you could roll variants forever. And as long as you were willing to dedicate the time into re-rolling over and over and over, you could get the best possible roll that your account was capable of. And I saw what that did for the players who don't spend a lot on the game, who were able to strategically invest in units over time and get them to a place where now all of a sudden they're ranking, top 3,000 in Dark Visions, which they've never done before. And getting to watch them make posts about it on the Facebook page and how proud they were for the amount of time that they invested and how they strategically used unit select shards to get Berserker Riku to get to that place. A lot of free to play players or like low level minnows invested so heavily over the course of those, what we'll say, probably 3 to 6 months on that team and strategy. And then watching it get taken away, I think took away a lot of the spirit of the game because people could get out of it exactly what they were putting into it, and the amount of time and long-term resource management that it took to get to that strategy if you didn't wail on Berserker Riku because you don't love Final Fantasy X like I did, that it was so much fun to watch and then watch people just bang their heads up against it because at the end of the day, your ability to get a high score was still going to be dependent on how well you could gear those units. So if you didn't have the best gear, you still weren't getting the best scores, even if you used exactly the same team. And then watching it just be nerfed to the point where it took it away, I watched people who built towards those teams, again, 3 to 6 months of planning long term, just get completely flushed down the toilet. And I watched more people quit from the counter bug or the counter, I guess, nerf than I did at any of the other Dark Visions mishandlings because they felt like now this thing that they invested all of these times and resources and shards into was now completely irrelevant. They wasted 6 months on things that they'll never get back, and now they felt behind where the actual meta was to the point where they never felt like they could catch up. So they quit, and they quit in droves because of it. And so I honestly think that one potentially was more harmful than the 7-man glitch handling was.
It sounds like Dark Vision's the source of all the problems.
It does, doesn't it? Which we could refine it even more and we can say true ranked content or non-shared rank 1 content is the source of all the problems.
Yeah. Although on the other hand, I will say that some of the biggest spenders which are also usually some of the top 10 players,
Mm.
they have said in the past that if they didn't have non-shared content, they just wouldn't have bothered with the game. Period. So
Sure,
it definitely does bring in the money, for all the
sure.
problems it causes as well. It does also bring in a lot of the money, because that's part of the thing is, again, like you said earlier, people spend money. They aren't spending it to support the game. They're spending it to either show off or
Mm-hmm.
flex, etc. And
Mm-hmm.
those unranked contents are where the biggest spenders get to show off the most, for the most part.
Mm-hmm. Which again, I mean, for the amount that I poured into this game, being as lazy as I am was definitely in direct opposition to the amount of resources I put into this game, for sure.
So changing gears a little bit, from Dark Visions, Clash of Wills.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's no secret that I've really enjoyed Clash of Wills from the beginning. Um, what are your thoughts just overall, just everything Clash of Wills? Do you think Clash of Wills was a good addition to the game? Do you think things could have been done better? Do you think, just give me your just generalized thoughts on Clash of Wills entirely, not about Clash of Wills Another. We're going to talk about that a little bit
Mm-hmm.
in a separate topic, a little bit in the future, but just Clash of Wills, the regular Clash of Wills. Did you
Sure.
like it? Was it good? Tell me about it.
I think Clash of Wills is probably the only reason Global has made it to 8 years. Um, it was the one thing that Global did that really kind of set itself apart from the JP version. Now we can look back at that on hindsight and say, was that a good idea or not? Hard to say. Um, but I think Clash of Wills really gave us as a global server an opportunity to get that ranked collaborative gameplay that a lot of people are looking for, while also making content that was interesting, at least for the first, you know, year and a half, let's say. It did get it did get old, it did get stale, it got really repetitive. A lot of rinse and repeats. You and I have talked about this pretty extensively, like the differences between something like the Ginger Buff Man versus almost every other Dark Vision or Clash of Wills we ever had. But I appreciate Clash of Wills for the gear that it introduced. It gave you something to work for long term in order to get easily the best equipment in the game outside of now the DV Greatsword. Um, the content was interesting, and while they never did what they told us they were going to do, the door that it opened up with the Chamber of Vengeance and what could have been from that would have never even been remotely plausible without Clash of Wills. And so I really think Clash of Wills breathed a lot of great life into the game, gave Global a great platform to make truly phenomenal global original units, which, I'm sure we'll talk about at some point being for better or for worse for the overall state of the game. Um, it was a great thing. It bought Global a lot of time. It made money. And it made a lot of things that, people like you and I have talked about now for years, which we really wouldn't have been able to do with the formulaic, like, DV and DV Abyss nonsense.
Mm-hmm. So, for the 2.5 years we had Clash of Wills, is there a specific boss or like two or three bosses that stand out
Mm.
for you as like really memorable and awesome? And then on the same side, is there like one or two bosses that stand out as like worst ever, so to speak?
Oh, gosh. Okay. So one boss in particular fits both of those categories, but we'll come back to that in a second. So I'm well documented and on record as saying that Telfalsanis is the greatest content we ever got in this game. So honestly, my favorite, bar none, was just getting to see them in Clash of Wills as the final Clash of Wills enemy. To me, there was something really, I guess, cathartic about that. It felt like a good sense of closure that our final Clash of Wills, and the only multi-stage one we ever got, was just Telfalsanis, reborn. Um, Mentally, that did me a lot of favors. But as far as, honestly, the most memorable, oh god, that stupid derpy dragon, which was just an RNG fight. So it was a great fight because one, that changing the sprite at April Fools honestly was such a nice touch, because that means they went in and designed that sprite for that, and I love it. Probably the last time we ever saw a creative sprite, unfortunately. But I hate having artificial difficulty locked behind RNG. I hate it. The fact that you could do everything right, and all of a sudden you roll 8 non-coverable fixed damage magic attacks that you could do nothing about, and you wipe and have to start all over again. That was not a short fight. And so oh god, that was such an irritating thing. I think I didn't rank 1 that one until probably the second to last day, just because I did not want to sit down and deal with it. And then of course I think I did it on like my first try, because I think I only rolled, what was it, chromatic wave or something like that? Is that what the
chromatic wave? I'm pretty sure it was the one that
I think so.
You could just spam over and over.
And I think on my first attempt at level 99 to get rank 1, I think I only rolled 2 rolls. So it all ended up being for nothing, and I played it up in my head, like an invalid. But that's what happened. I didn't want to do it, and then I did it, and then it was over. But just that one in particular was so irritating. And
for me,
with a special bonus to the Parasite Eve one, just because I think the sprite was excellent.
Oh yeah. For me, I think I have 2 that just really stand out in my memory as being awesome, and I talk about it frequently in videos. It'd be no surprise here, but one of them was Mortuum, the little castle. Mm-hmm. I think he was like the 6th Clash of Wills, so the first year, which when Clash of Wills was really innovative. That castle boss was just so awesome because the AI was like, what's the proper, not interactive, but adaptive or whatever. He responded depending on the various things you did on your turns. The boss had different turns. That's what I love, is that kind of stuff. Like when a boss is just following a script no matter what, it's so boring to me. And that's honestly just how Clash of Wills ended up being for the last year, is just like very straight line scripts. And that's just so boring. Like the first year was really a lot more interesting in AI for Clash of Wills. And that Mortuum was one of my favorites just because it was so... There's a word for it. I cannot think of the proper adjective to the way it... Someone's going to say in the comments. But the way that the boss's AI would be different depending on what you did during your turns. And it was like pretty interesting. I loved that so much.
It was variable for sure.
Yes, it was so awesome. But I guess probably just the overall highest quality Clash of Wills boss would probably be Tyranitar, the first anniversary Clash of Wills boss, because they put in so much work to that boss, and it was so cool the way he was like a combination of the first 12 bosses, and he would change phases, and then the fields he put up were also like little graphics of the earlier bosses. That was just, they put in so much work for that anniversary Clash of Wills boss, and it was just like perfection. I loved it so much.
I don't feel absurd to say that, with the exception of maybe the second anniversary, I think that one was probably my favorite, as long as we disregard how poor of a unit Wilk was.
Oh Lord, Wilk. I want to talk a little bit about some. I'm wondering how much I can say. We're gonna talk about units in a minute, but oh yeah. And then I guess my least favorite. So I mean, I guess just straight up, it's Anthemosa, because of all the drama and the problem with Anthemosa. But I feel like that's a cop-out answer, so I don't really want to say Anthemosa. But
I don't think it is a cop-out answer, though. Because it's just because it's universally agreed upon, it's not a cop-out. There's a reason why it's so agreed upon. It's the only Clash of Wills I did not take the time to even try to rank 1.
So
it was not worth the time.
For sure. So okay, so Anthemosa, unquestionably worst boss, unquestionably. But so putting that aside, because that's like so far into the negative column, what was just another boss that stands out to me as just like bad? And for me, it might be a strange answer. It's going to have to be the Egg boss, the Egg Exterminator. And the reason is, it was probably the blandest boss we've ever had in Clash of Wills. He had physical damage that did not have accuracy, and like one magic attack that was elemental. So like an evading physical tank with a little bit of like thunder resist on your party, and he's literally toothless. Does nothing whatsoever. The most pointless punching bag boss they have ever had. They phoned in that boss so hard. I will never forget how stupid of and waste of a boss that was. It could have been literally the training dummy in the Vortex, and it would have been probably more threatening.
I mean, it was basically just its Chamber of Vengeance. It's pretty much all it was.
The Chamber of Vengeance one, no. The Chamber of Vengeance one had mechanics. It was hard. This was easier than Chamber of Vengeance. The Chamber of Vengeance one,
it was like the raid version.
Yeah, he like dispelled you, and he had HP locks, and he set you to 1 HP. He had horrible damage. The Chamber of Vengeance one was hard. This one was nothing. It was like a raid boss. Exactly like you say. It was like a raid boss. It was just. If they had just copied the Chamber of Vengeance one, it would have been interesting. This was worse than the Chamber of Vengeance boss. It was in my opinion the worst boss of all time, not counting Anthemosa.
I'll be honest. I put that Exterminator Clash of Wills boss, and I'll clarify this, but right next to that Vestige of Morgana Clash of Wills boss, and I say that only because yes, it was an early boss, so like we look at it fondly as it was this great thing. But it wasn't that fundamentally different from any other Morgana fight we had ever had. And so we look back on it fondly because it was such an early Clash of Wills. But in reality, it was not that difficult of a boss. It simply was a thing that we could do. And so don't get me wrong, I love it. I loved the early stuff, but I consider them about the same. Now, that being said, was the Exterminator not an April Clash of Wills? Because I'm pretty sure it was. And if that's the case, of course, it's all of the first ones of the seasons were awful because they were cupcakes. That's why I call them cupcakes, because they've always been that way.
Yeah. So moving on to Clash of Wills Another. So Clash of Wills Another is pretty often cited as what a lot of people consider like what killed the game, is because even the developers themselves have on that live stream, like they I forget her name. They brought her on. They said they've been working on Clash of Wills Another for months. It's still months away. So like we know like 6 months of development time was focused into Clash of Wills Another. And after like 6 months or so of developing, it came out and it was just universally hated as much as Anthemosa almost. No one liked Clash of Wills Another for a multitude of reasons. It handicapped your team building. It completely put the fight on rails. You had every single clear was identical because you had to do specific stuff on the turn. It just really took all the innovation and agency out of Clash of Wills. It made it horrible. It was so bad. It was so bad. No one liked it, and they backpedaled immediately because it was that universally hated. But that was 6 months, or maybe more, that the developers were focusing on all their time to develop this, and it was just a flop. What are your thoughts? Like, did that just overall kill the game? Was that just the breaking point? How do you feel about Clash of Wills? Another.
I mean, it's hard to call anything the breaking point, right? Because we saw so much for so long just be the same. That being said, it's so hard. I think about like any business on the face of the earth, and the man hours and the money that would go into developing something like that, and then you basically release the Borderlands movie of content in a mobile game, and you just flushed 6 months of man hours and limited financial resources straight down the toilet. It's such a shame. And while I don't necessarily think that was the tipping point, the tipping point, I do think that was probably the point of no return for them financially, because they never had the opportunity to recoup. It didn't drive enough people to pull for very specific units. It didn't inspire a lot of creativity. It really didn't do anything positive. And in fact, what it did is it made the really cool units like Murray, it made everybody resent that they existed at all. because now not only did you have to pull Mireille, you needed the entirety of that light synergy team in order to even have a chance to complete it. And again, as you said, it took away all of the agency that players had as far as team building, which for the longest time was one of the truest high points of FFBE, was that you could build whatever you wanted using units you loved, and it might suck a little bit, but you could figure out how to make it work. Clash of Wills another spat in the face of that entire like energy, and it was really a big shame because I think it had a lot of potential too. I think adding a second gauge, giving a boss very specific mechanics that you had to perform certain actions during in order to offset them to give you an opportunity to do more damage. That's actually that could have been a really good thing for Clash of Wills because it added more mechanics, and mechanics after a while was truly the one thing that Clash of Wills was lacking. But you can't do it at the expense of autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what it was, is we're going to implement mechanics, but in order to circumvent the mechanics, we're going to add brand new mechanics to units that only one, maybe two units ever are going to have the right skills that would ever be worth using in order to get this accomplished. Why in the world would I ever use a 30% lightning field when I could use a 300% stat buff? You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like, it's the disparity between what the on banner unit was for their skills to circumvent the mechanics. I don't even remember what they were called at this point. They're gone from my mind. Um, versus the existing units that they gave those skills to. It, it's like trying to bring a 3-star unit to an NV plus fight. It just, you're never gonna do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I think Gladiolus, the first one,
Uh
was
huh.
the only reasonable bring other than the new Noctis that most people didn't pull for. It was like either Noctis or
Mm-hmm.
Gladiolus were the only two that had the good. Was it
Mm-hmm.
Vertex? I can't remember. I think
That's what it was. Yep,
Vertex.
that's it. Yep.
Yeah, Vertex skills, and
But it's the Noctis that you pull for or the Gladiolus that you pay for. Which one do you want?
mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
And that was the wrong decision.
and both of them just didn't bring anything in the clash. Like Noctis did okay damage, but like as far as the utility and stuff, like they don't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
They're just
The
dead
Noct
slots.
Yep, he was just a leader skill for that one.
It was so bad. Yeah. Ugh.
It's such a shame because honestly, if you really take a step back, it had so much potential to have been a good thing. And so then you kind of reflect on the fact that they were working on it for 6 months. Did you have two people working on it for 6 months? Because like you had to have thought that develop at least a few more skills or give some existing units those skills. I don't even care if they're limited units because chances are a lot of people pulled on them, at least more people who want to pull for, you know, Noctis. Because
Mm-hmm.
only really Final Fantasy 15 fans are pulling for Noctis. And Murray was incredible. You knew people will always pull for the global originals, but you made it so that you had to. And the second you make a game like this with units that you absolutely have to pull in order to clear content that used to just be for everybody, you create such a big barrier that where the game was at the time, you couldn't overcome it.
Mm-hmm. I think actually I was so irritated at the system, I refused to pull from Array by memory.
Okay. I
Uh,
do
I
believe you did not.
I have her now, but I think that was all off banners that I got her from.
I think you got her on like a random EX ticket or something in the
Oh,
second week of her Clash of Wills,
I might have. Yeah, I don't remember.
if
I
I
do recall
vaguely
I did
remember.
not go to pity for her. I definitely know that.
Yeah, I think I have 7 copies of her STMR. So
What? Wow.
disparity. Yeah, well, it's a good STMR, or at least it would be if we had any reason to use it now.
Crazy. So going to units for a little bit. Um, I guess if I ask you what was your favorite unit of all time, I guess we're gonna get Aang,
Sylvie.
right? Oh, Sylvie?
Sylvie.
Sylvie more than Aang?
Yeah.
Okay.
Aang is the most important unit in the game to me, just because of like the circumstances surrounding him. At what like that for me was the tipping point in my account. And so I kind of had a pretty mid account. I was having a hard time adding friends in game who were potentially powerful enough to carry me because I was still very free to play back then. Aang was the first unit that I had in game who made me like a relevant power gamer in the server, um, which was super great for me. So Aang is really important to me. He was a great fixed dice LB finisher back then. His Neo Visions form is, I think it's probably one of the best global exclusive Neos that they ever put out. Potentially one of the best global exclusive units that they ever put out. But for me, no questions asked, my favorite unit and still who I think the best unit of all time is it's Sylvie in both forms. Sylvie to me absolutely changed this game not once but twice and set a bar for what was considered acceptable for a support unit. The fact that still to this day you could probably bring regular Sylvie to a fight, and I'd be surprised if you couldn't at least come close to
Okay.
still using her as a standalone. Like it's that easy, no questions asked. My favorite unit, the best unit of the game to me.
Okay. So, and again, I totally understand that. I completely agree. Completely agree. Sylvie is phenomenal.
Mhm.
But let's put aside for a moment some of the obvious answers like Sylvie, Esther,
Okay.
Elena. You know, the global overpowered units. So
Okay.
putting some of those aside, who would be a favorite unit that would be a little bit unexpected for you to say? Is there anyone that stands out that isn't like in the spotlight for most people?
Okay. So if we're talking about favorite, are we just going with like aesthetics? Are we going for
No, we can do both. We can do both. Okay, so yeah, so favorite in terms of either the sprite, storyline, stuff like that, as well as
okay.
favorite of I want them on my party.
Oh goodness. Okay. Um all right. So my favorite unit story-wise is Lunera by far.
Okay.
Um, that's to me. I've said this so many times. I'm sorry for people tired of hearing it. Lunera and Brand's story event to me is one of the best, not just FFBEs. It was the best FFBE story, but it's one of the best just individual stories I think any Final Fantasy game has ever told. Just because it to me was so well done in such a short form that it was really honestly it set such a high bar for what some of those story events should or could be, that I don't actually honestly ever know if they ever even got close to again. So
So
Lunera is up there for me for sure, story wise.
So real quick, just as a slight aside,
Mm,
so Lunera and Brand's story event is very frequently quoted as one of the best story events they've done. And
mm,
unfortunately, it was like in like what the second or third year. It's really
mm-hmm.
old at this point.
Yes, it is.
Assuming you remember, do you want to give like the 2 or 3 minute summary of what happened in that story event for people that never got to experience it?
Sure. Forgive my memory.
Yeah, it's been a
As
long
I
time.
I may be short on some specifics, but as I recall, Bran was in love with Lunera. I believe I don't remember if they actually were married or she simply was like the knight vowed to protect her, but was absolutely in love with her. Went on this whole long quest to try to cure her illness. Ended up meeting a dwarf named Ruggles, hence the Ruggles vision card of him carving out that stone for anybody who's seen or paid attention to that. They go on a whole journey together. It ends up not working out. Lunera still dies, then Bran dies, and then Ruggles is the one left remaining to tell their story. Um, Absolutely incredible, well done. Actually made you feel things. An absolute journey of complete and immense futility, but one that was undertaken all the same because, the power of love equates to the power of friendship, blah blah blah. But so well done.
It was. It really was, and that definitely is. You know, if I had to rank like the top five story events, that would probably be one of the top five for me.
Hmm.
Maybe top 2 or 3. It really was. It definitely, that was one of the ones that I felt kind of depressed as well. Like I'm not someone that
Hmm.
usually gets emotional about games, but I was like, wow, that is like sad the way it ended because yeah, like Ruggles, he lost both his friends, but he's gonna like carry on
Hmm.
their legacy. It really was a really well done story event, and people that say that's one of the best ones, it's for good reason. It really was great.
Hmm. I'm still sad that they never went back and reran it just so that new players could have experienced it too. I get it, I guess, but it was so good. That being said, the other answer to your question is I would actually want on my team that are potentially a surprise. Um, Folka is my definitive answer. but there is always a special place in my heart for Mercedes, for Soze, and for Shine, because I think all three of those units really deserved a little bit more. I still think that a Shine Sylvia Brave Shift unit would have been so much fun.
Did Shine have a story event? I think she did, right?
I do believe so, because that's when you found out that Sylvia and Shine were the same.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I honestly could not even tell you whose story unit that was. It was so long ago.
That was a long time. Yeah.
But the Mercedes Luca story was amazing. Soze's got a special place in my heart just because he was one of my original carries when I was first ever playing the game, and he could just be an LB spam to clear out stages you didn't want to deal with. I thought he was a fun unit.
Soze? You mean the like Emperor
The
of
four-star,
Zoldan or whatever?
Uh-huh.
What did he even? I don't think I've ever had him in a party. Like what did he actually do in a party?
Very little. But he had a decent multi-hit LB,
Oh,
AoE,
okay.
and I don't know what it was. I think I honestly just really enjoyed his sprite, and then his LB filled pretty quickly for somebody who put no investment into it. And it hit respectably hard for what I needed it to be. And so I used him for he was one of the first units that I ever took from 4-star to 6-star. Way back when, I really, really just enjoyed it. I put him right next to Mercedes at the time. And then Luca was one of my only healers that I used consistently next to Rosa and Tillith. So I think the Mercedes Luca thing really should have been built out more, just when we had everything water related. But SXM has said that better than I ever will, so we'll let it stand where it is.
I was just about to say, you've definitely got one person that agrees with you.
For sure. He and I are very much on the same page as far as all that is concerned.
So for me, again, putting aside the obvious answers, I think as far as like gameplay, the one that most impressed me is, again, you've heard this before, is I think Kaito, the Neovision's Kaito. His kit is just so well built as a debuffer. I love him, and he was still, I mean, literally to this day, he's on the Morgana clear. Maybe not after the nerf, but like sure. Until the end of the game, until the EOS patch, Kaito was still on the meta parties. So, and he's like, what, 4 years old at this point? Or, I don't know, 2 or 3 years old?
He's up there, yeah.
Yeah. And Kaito's kit, so hats off to the person that designed Kaito. Amazing, amazing unit. Great sprite, great kit, garbage damage, unfortunately. That's the downside. But love that kit. As far as like a story unit that I really, really liked, and again, this might seem like a little bit of a generic answer, but I think it's Hayo. I loved Hayo's second season story. The whole thing of like, the hero Rain from the first season, the goody two shoes, all of a sudden, because at the beginning of season 2, you had no idea. You found out he was Rain pretty quick, but you had no idea why Rain was, air quotes, evil in season 2. And that was just super awesome to me. And that scene where he like slices Fina's chest open or whatever, then you find out later he like used magic to seal the wound so she didn't actually die. But like when I saw Rain slice Fina and almost kill her, I'm like, what is going on? This is so cool. And I just thought it was really well written, and it made me really like Rain. And also, I love his sprite. I love the Hayo sprite, especially the LB when he jumps in the air and all. It's great. Great. I love Hayo.
Definitely. Between season 1 and season 2, I'm not sure I could sit here and tell you which one I really liked more. I think the stories were as much the same as they are different, because it really kind of is the exact same story if we really get down to it. But I just, the writing difference between seasons 1 and 2 were so great. Like, honestly, you could pick almost any character from seasons 1 or 2 as a favorite character storyline wise, and I could probably agree with you in some way. Just because every one of those characters was made likable. Like, for people who never, or who don't even remember what Shara did, Shara was great. The original storyline between him being Jake's little brother was great. It was very well told, made you actually care about Shara as a unit. Luca being Nicole's sister, great story. Never talk about it again. Why would we ever? It's just there's so much, and then we can get on my soapbox again about precursor units, but it's okay. It I will say, if nothing else, this game did a great job at telling so many stories. They did just as good a job as leaving a lot of their own work unfinished, but the stories that they did tell were honestly some of the best I've just ever seen or experienced.
So, if I can cut in real quick about that precursor thing again, I'm like
Uh-huh.
pulling the curtain aside slightly, some behind the scenes info. So apparently, the reason that precursor storyline was just like dropped is because the author of that storyline moved on to a different company. So that's
All
it.
right.
Wasn't that they just like got tired of it. The person that was writing it was no longer working on Brave Exvius.
Well, I'm
So
gonna need a name and an address and like $20,000 so I can get this guy to finish what he started. Make it a graphic novel. Let me read it. I need to know because if we let's reflect for a second on how many of the most memorable units we ever got in FFBE are either precursors or directly related to. Because you've already named one of them, right? Kaito was a precursor, and then he had his Keeper of Time. So between the precursors and the Keepers of Time, that's awesome. You had Carton, you had Sky, you had so many good units, and we never got to know anything about how they're connected or what precursors actually were.
yep.
God, we never even got a story event for Sky, did we?
Story event? I don't think so. I don't think so. No, Sky just came
That's such
out
a
and was
shame.
overpowered, but no story event.
Yeah, yeah, that's about right. That's really sad. Well, at least I know that potentially a guy had a plan at one point, and then we just never got to see it because FFBE couldn't keep him gainfully employed. Excellent.
I actually have no idea like what happened. Like, did they leave? Did they get a better offer? Did they
Sure.
get promoted? I have no clue. All I know is they were no longer working on Brave Exvius for whatever reason.
Sure. That's just me being snarky.
So I have a few things written down. I can just you know no specific order, just like give some curious insight. So do you remember the whole humbug with the original Esther and what went on with that?
Yes,
With
sure do.
Esther was released, and then there was a post on Reddit before Esther was pullable. Like she was in the game but not pullable, and we saw her data. And there was a post on Reddit that said Esther's too good, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then half an hour before her banner went live, there was a hotfix, and Esther was
Mm-hmm.
nerfed.
Sure do.
So I can tell you is from what I hear, there's always been a kind of a debate. Did that Reddit post really influence anything? And from what I'm hearing, the answer is yes.
Oh man.
That Reddit post sent up a red flag and caused them to investigate Esther's numbers a little bit closer. And then they realized, wait a minute, this unit really is stronger than we meant. We need to fix this immediately. So
Mm.
as a little bit of end of game trivia, yes, it was the Reddit post that got Esther nerfed. There you go.
That's I get it because like let's be honest, they made the most powerful unit that was ever imaginable at the time, and then they nerfed her until she became the most powerful unit that we had at the time. So like
Yes,
you can't be that mad in the grand scheme of things, even though we all still are.
yes,
Still to
and
me though, the my biggest thing is not only did they do that, they also nerfed Sylvie's LB.
yes, Sylvie's. Oh, yes, Sylvie's was also. I think it was like 100 all resist back in the
Yes,
day
it
when that
was.
was like unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so both of them, they really were. I do feel like the nerf was justified because she was
Yes,
too strong.
absolutely.
But there's just been like this little debate in the community, since then. Did the Reddit post really cause Esther to be nerfed, or was she scheduled to be nerfed anyway? But
Mm.
from what I'm hearing, it was the Reddit post that sent up the alert for them to look further, and that caused it.
Oh man, what a narc.
I know, I know. And I don't want to call out who did. I mean, most people know anyway, but like I'm not meaning to call him out. Because again, I honestly do agree with his thoughts on that Reddit post. Like Esther was too strong; it would have messed up game balance, and it probably would have been bad for the game long term. Because
Mm-hmm.
if a unit in her original form had been released, it would have just like shut down the next 8 months of banners. Because what's the point? We've got Esther.
Except then it didn't because still Xeno was more powerful in theory with a worse rotation,
Oh
but
no no
Xeno was more
no
powerful than
no no
Esther was.
no! What I'm saying is, if she had come out as she originally was before the
Well,
nerf,
sure.
yeah, she
Well,
was.
they could have just made Xeno stronger. It's fine.
And that is kind of that is kind of the trade off here with the global buffs. Is we love global buffs and all, but it does kind of pigeonhole you into a corner where if
Mm-hmm.
you buff this unit, you have to buff the next week's unit because otherwise
Mm-hmm.
it's an immediate skip. And it sets off this domino effect of you're caught in this loop of always having to buff every single unit to keep up with it. So it's some units needed the buff unquestionably.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, some of them, I don't know. It's like it seemed that they had a really weird way of doing global buffs because some of them
Yes.
were certainly needed. Others they would like just buff an already meta unit. For example, Scarlet Flaring Rain is the perfect
Mm-hmm.
example. He was already going to be super meta. Everyone was holding out for him, and then they buffed him way more. That was such
Mm-hmm.
a questionable decision when they had so many others that needed buffs and they were just completely ignored. Another one is the Final Fantasy 15 units, Arden and Noctum, or Arden and Noctis.
Mm-hmm.
They buffed those, and they were already going to be meta when they came out, and they buffed them anyway. Like
Mm-hmm.
weird, you know?
So I guess to that end, then, just for fun, what was your favorite unit, purely damage dealer speaking? What was your favorite global power creep unit? Like, who do you
Um,
think was the most influential and meta changing of all of them? Because we've had quite a few.
yeah. So, good question. I
Leave in the
guess,
comments down below what yours is. Haha.
I guess maybe the Neovisions 2B. And it's not because I'm a
Mm.
Nier fan. 'Cause I'm really not a Nier. I've never played Nier, so it's nothing to do with
Oh,
nothing.
really?
It's nothing to do with fandom. It's just like she was, I think, the first AOE tag chaining meta damage dealer that mattered, and she was
Mhm.
so good for so long. And yeah, strictly just strictly meta speaking, I guess it would have to be 2B. I mean, of course, there's of course both Esters, the original one and the Neo one.
Mhm.
They were both amazing as well, so they could also be argued. But I don't know. I just really like 2B because she was like smooth, and I love tag chainers. That's probably why I love Dwayne more than most people. Most people hated Dwayne.
Sure.
I love them because of the tag chaining. But
Sure.
just like 2B being a really easy to use tag chainer and was meta for a really long time. Really
Mhm.
long time. So I would say 2B, and it has nothing to do with favoritism. It's just 2B. I liked her.
First of all, you really and truly should play Nier Automata. It's masterfully done. Um, that being said, for me, because I obviously had to think about this question before I asked you because I needed an answer. I'm torn between two because I think that there was two units that really set themselves apart and kind of encapsulated what global power creep was. The first of which being the original 5-star Elena, because not only did her rotation was so flexible, but it's probably the last unit whose rotation I truly and well memorized so that you could use her damage most optimally. And she had so much flexibility between her elements, and she could just do so many things that also supported the party while making her stronger in the process. It was phenomenal. But I would be remiss if I didn't also talk about the Lunar New Year monks, whose
Oh,
names I will always massacre.
Zhuan Wu.
Xuan Wu and Qinglong, yeah. That unit to me was so stupid busted for the longest time that even when they gave Rico Rodriguez his awakenings, that they were so good for AOE bolting strike. Was that one of our first Magnus abilities in the game? I think it was because they were I think the first unit in Global who had a Magnus ability, and at the time it was just absolutely stupid, busted powerful with the things that they could do while also being a spirit scaling damage dealer. It's what Leela always should have been on Global. To me, that they were the only damage dealer you really needed, other than maybe Elena, for the entire rest of the 7-star era before, we got physical, magic, ace, and rem.
Awesome. Okay, so another question. Speaking strictly of people that are no longer around, content creators. So I know, some of us are still here, like, myself. I don't want to name them because I'm going to leave someone out and I'm going to feel bad. So strictly speaking of those that have retired or moved on, what were some of your favorite content creators from the past? Assuming you want to call anyone out.
Hell yeah, I'm gonna call him out. All right, so I name him first just because I would consider him like a genuine and legitimate internet friend. But Clake is my boy. We've been, Discord friends and social, mostly about college football for years now. So shout out Clake. I was a big fan of Howl's, before things got like weird, and I think he got really jaded with the game, and it really started to affect him. Evil Laughter obviously was probably one of the most influential at the time because of his absolute belligerent, stubborn, I refuse to use a meta team personality, and I loved and respected every moment of that with him. And then of course, I mean Gonzi. Gonzi was one of the OG. This is how you do this, and if you do this any other way, you're just not optimized. Gonzi is goated forever and always. I nothing but respect for all of those guys. I don't know what this community would honestly even be without any of those guys, truthfully. I don't think we would have nearly been able to last as long because those guys made a game with no relevant tutorials and made the game accessible. And I think that's really the biggest unspoken great thing that honestly all of you content creators have been able to give people like us is this game does not explain any of its mechanics. And so to be able to have people come on and say, no, this is how you do this thing, and these are the reasons why you do this thing, what that did for the longevity of this game, honestly, the Gumi and Square global development staffs owe you guys such a tremendous amount for even making it this far. And you'll probably never get your flowers for it, but you really, all of you should.
So for me, some of the retired content creators that I really like, and again, I'm going to name a few, and that does not mean anyone I didn't name I don't love as well. I watched the majority of them over time. But just some of the ones that I directly interacted with is why they stand out to me. So once again, like you said, Gonzi the Mage, or Gonzi, was awesome. I'm still in his Discord. We still keep in contact. He has just been an amazing friend even before Brave Exvius. And it was a really sad day when unfortunately he just had enough and moved on. But I really do miss Gonzi making his videos as well. And just as a little quick trivia. So for anyone that watched my videos from day one, you might remember that like the first year or two of videos, the sound quality was relatively low. I was using one of those little desk stand $5 microphones from like Walmart.
Oh, wow.
And it was a pretty low quality. Gonzi the Mage hated my audio quality, and he told me he's got an old like streamer quality microphone. Do I want it? I'm like, dude, you can't give me an expensive microphone. He's like, I'm not using it. I am going to pay for the shipping to ship it to you. You are going to get a better microphone. And he mailed it out to me, and to this day, I am using this enormous, like this big snowball thing microphone. It's huge. It's hanging above my computer, but it is thanks to Gonzi that I actually have good audio quality in my videos. He's that cool of a dude.
What a guy.
Really, he's so awesome. Another one is, again, like you said, Clake. I really loved Clake. He hosted some fan fest. He was really like a big time creator, and he was just really fun to watch. His energy during videos, it might have been a little bit cheesy when he like did his little screams during pool videos,
Sure.
but it made me smile. I liked it. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
And again, I talked to him a few times. I wasn't like super close friends with Clake. We just weren't super close. But I did talk to him a few times, and he was always so cool and awesome when I talked to him. And just really liked him. Another one is Meet Me on Mars.
Absolutely.
And that one, again, he's a good friend that I kept in contact with even to this day. And he might be a little bit more of the edge case because, and again, I love Mars, don't get me wrong, but I will say he's can be a little bit abrasive, I'll say, sometimes in what he does. So he might not be everyone's favorite, but he did put some awesome videos out there. He made some really cool gimmick clears, and again, he was just a cool guy to hang out with, even if maybe he sometimes was a little bit outgoing or whatever. And then I guess the last one I'm going to call out, this is one I bet you most people have no idea who I'm talking about. He was, not to be insulting, but he was relatively small. But it was a content creator called Dimple Fan. And he made videos, and he did poll videos. It was him and his wife in a lot of the videos.
Oh, yeah.
I just enjoyed his stuff. I watched him. He was a real small content creator, but I really enjoyed his videos.
I forgot all about those.
Yeah, I liked his videos. They were good. I was sad to see when he quit.
Wow. Yeah, I remember the videos of him and his wife. Oh my goodness.
They were just fun to watch. Fun to watch.
Yeah, they were. They had such a fun dynamic. I hope they're doing well.
And again, there were so many more creators that I watched lots of their stuff. And I don't want to just be here forever because I'm going to name like 5 more, and I'm going to forget one person by accident that I probably awesomely love. Just can't think of it because this was not pre-planned. I'm just thinking of these on the spot. But over the years, we've had so many. And of course, the active ones. I did say exclude the active ones. We've still got a bunch. Like Gert does amazing stuff. Deus Gaming does amazing stuff. I think Kamikiro actually has recently quit when they dropped the Spanish language, but he until very recently did awesome stuff. A lot more. I guarantee you I'm forgetting someone. They're going to message me later. What about me? I forgot. I'm sorry.
Archaic Werewolf was great.
Yes, he was awesome as well.
Goodness. Sart's fantastic, of course.
Flip Method was another one. He actually hosted the unofficial fan fest. Again, you say, how could I forget Flip? I'm just... In the moment, you don't always think of every single person, even if they're amazing.
Oh no, we've honestly, as a community, we've been very blessed with some phenomenal content creators who each have their own personalities and have really done a lot to help grow this community. Love them or hate them for their own content. You can't say anything but appreciate what they've brought to it, honestly.
And so speaking of that a little bit. We don't really have a big selection here, but the public face of the global team. So, like Hiroki, Justin, Tony, Shally, Alex, Jojo, Dasol. Who else have we seen in live stream videos? Am I missing anyone? Maxwell
Elytra,
Powers,
of course. Elytra,
yes, she was in videos. Maxwell was only an announcer a few times, but I still count him because he was in official videos.
Sure, why not?
So is there anyone from that list that, you want to say really was great? Maybe, hopefully they improve later. I don't want to be too negative or anything, but just I guess let's just focus on the ones that were great. So who was great from our streamers officially?
I mean, we don't need to belabor the point about Shally. The game has never been the same since she's been gone. She's been missed. She meant so much to so many people. It's that there's no need to say what we've already said. That being said, I do carry a bit of my own biases here. As somebody who's again heavily involved with the Facebook page, none of this would have happened without Elytra. She built the Facebook page. She was one of the original people in charge of it. She was the original community manager working directly for Square. She's done so much to grow this community that I don't think, and I just did a video with her the other day. I don't think she'll ever honestly truly know how much she changed so many people's lives. And maybe she will, but she's honestly one of the most humble people that she'll still never honestly say it. But she built a group which still to this day at end of service announcement still has 28,000 people in it for a
Wow.
Facebook group, for one of many Facebook groups, mind you, but a Facebook group based on a mobile game that most people on the face of this earth have still never heard of. And 28,000 of us still at end of service are members of this group and pretty active in this community. And we owe honestly all of that to her. And so, Elytra, if you were watching this and have made it this far into the video, again, I said it to you the other day. Thank you genuinely from the bottom of my heart. And I also want to throw out there Docile. I mean, the Docile Shali chemistry that we had was one of the biggest, like, endearing things about this game. And the best part about them to me is that they would sit there and make videos and make content and actually play the game. And when you're trying to be the faces of a community, it means a lot to the members of that community when you actually play the game. And
Mm-hmm.
it shows, and you could tell. And I'll never forget them using Reflect Firaja to beat. I don't even remember who. I think it was Elifikiris, the scoring of Elifikiris trial. That I just the genuine joy on their faces when they tornado chain reflected like quad or quint cast Firaja was so awesome to watch.
Mm-hmm. So just again, a little bit of trivia. I bet most people didn't even know that Da Soul was actually a like developer producer for Brave Exvius. Did y'all know that? He was not just like a community guy. He was actually involved in running the game for quite a while. Did you know? Did you know that?
I did, yeah,
Oh, okay. Okay.
but I know that that's not particularly common knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing the things you learn when you're, friends with Elytra.
Yeah, so for real. So for me, again, I'm not going to call anyone out or anything, but I will say, and first of all, absolutely, Shali and Elytra were amazing. We lost Shali, unfortunately, and Elytra did eventually move to a different project. But, and those two were great. But I just wanted to give a little bit of a shout out to Alex. Now, I do
Mm-hmm.
know that Alex was maybe not the most popular of the people on the videos, mostly
Mm-hmm.
because he didn't seem like he was that deeply knowledgeable about the game, and
Mm-hmm.
I believe that as well. I don't think Alex was that really into the game. I just want to give a shout out to Alex for the enthusiasm he showed on videos, even if it was faking
Mm-hmm.
it. I always felt like he had high energy and he was decent at being on camera. I felt like
Mm-hmm.
I liked Alex.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah, I've seen some people saying Alex was not a great choice for the videos, but I just wanted to give my support. I thought Alex was high energy and at the very least tried to be enthusiastic, and I appreciated that.
And honestly, to that same vein, I I think Tony was given the reins of the project at a really unfortunate time in the game's lifespan.
Mm-hmm.
And so unfortunately he had to bear a lot of the brunt of the aggression of the community as we all struggled to watch the game end up where it is now.
For sure, for sure.
But I don't think I've never seen anybody outright have anything negative to say about Tony. I wish him genuinely well. I hope that he finds himself into a project at the beginning that runs for 8 years so he gets to be a part of the best days of a project,
Mm-hmm.
arguably the worst. Because he deserves at least that much. I think everybody should get to be a happier member of the team rather than kind of the mouthpiece of the fall.
For sure, for sure. Um, and let's see here, a few other points I wanted to go over. Uh, oh, and okay, so some of these are just like random questions that from talking to knowledgeable players and all, you might have a little bit of information. So just a question people asked a few times is why did we never get Dark Vision's Abyss?
Mm-hmm.
So the short answer is, from what I hear from talking to players that know more than me. So basically, it sounded like, and again, this is partially Clash of Wills Another's problem. The developers were busy focusing on Clash of Wills Another, so we can blame most of the problems on that stupid mode, which means they didn't really have time to implement Dark Vision's Abyss, and also Dark Vision's Abyss was initially not that popular in JP. And as a JP player, I can say that's probably true. The very first Dark Vision's Abyss, they maybe went a little bit too hard on the tuning. It was more like, day one Wicked Queen trial for a Dark Vision's boss, which is maybe a little bit much for a Dark Vision's boss. Sure. And it wasn't that popular. Someone like me, I really enjoyed it, but being in the JP community, I saw that 9 out of 10 players in JP did not like Dark Vision's Abyss originally. And so the global side, originally they had kind of heard some feedback from JP. This is not super popular, and they're working on Clash of Wills Another anyway, so therefore they decided it's just not really worth. Of course, later on, JP did improve Dark Vision's Abyss, and it became a lot more popular than it is. Honestly, it's still not super popular, but it's better than it was. So there's a little bit of, little trivia about what happened to what global. Are there any other questions for yourself, Barry, that maybe you're just curious about? Maybe I can answer from things I've talked to people, stuff like that.
I guess I'm curious as to about when they decided to start cutting as much content as they did, because it really, starting from skipping Cater, it seems that we lost out on so much of the actual game that I don't understand how it couldn't have just been, translated real quick and then copy pasted for the assets. Mm-hmm. So do you happen to know anything about why we started missing as much as we did when we started?
So from talking to people like, Robot DA and all, stuff like that, from what I'm to understand is, first of all, the global code base, or whatever you want to call it, the game was created in 2014, 2015, for the JP version. Of course, it went, public on 2015, but it was started to be created, 10 years ago in technology. And so the engine of the game is relatively old at this point. And they're still building on it and improving it, but at its core, the engine is outdated, is just a way to say it. Then the global version, they're having to merge a lot of other stuff into it. And again, I'm talking technical stuff, which when it was explained to me is a little bit over my head. But basically, the short version is it's a lot of work to merge the global stuff into the JP stuff. And every single thing they change on global adds extra work to it. And also because the global team, as Hiroki came out and said, they've been losing staff, etc. Their budget's been cut by higher ups, stuff like that. So they had a relatively small team working on global. They've already got a lot of work, and by cutting some of the stuff, it just cut down on the workload. So it's not specifically that they wanted to cut Cater because she was overpowered or anything like that, and the other units as well. It's just so we've got 7 hours of maintenance to implement A, B, C, D, and E. We just don't have time to do all that. We have to cut something. What's the least impactful thing to cut? Okay, C has got to go. Cater, you're not coming. You see what I'm saying? And then, of course, as it went on, more people eventually left the project because the project is not doing as successfully as it was. They're not really authorized to go and hire more people. So therefore, more stuff has to be cut. And of course, that is a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's going to lead to more people leading. You're digging yourselves deeper in the hole. And that's basically what happened to Global, is just death of 1,000 cuts. And it keeps getting worse and worse. The more they cut, the more people leave. The more they got to cut over and over and over. And as we saw, first to go was some of the units. Then we lost the crown stages. Then we lost the unit upgrades. Then we lost the New Visions Awakening Plus. And then we lost entire events entirely. Then we lost entire weeks where we had absolutely nothing. And then we had the game just end, unfortunately. So that's the summary. Is basically it was too much work to implement everything with not enough staff to implement it.
I see.
And of course, The obvious answer to that is why not just hire more people? That I don't have an answer to. I don't know.
Because yeah, I mean, it seems knowing nothing about their business ops
Mm-hmm.
side, you hire more people to include more content, to release more units, to make more money, to keep more players, to just continue. After year 5, the game feels like it was pretty much just moving on its own. So to just all of a sudden, like, it almost as though they built their own brick walls to stop, or so it felt. I don't know. Um, I don't know. I'm not obviously privy to that side of everything, so
Yeah, and again, this is
can't
just
speak
me
for much. But
hearing through other people.
sure.
If you want an exact, factually correct answer, you got to send an email to Hiroki, and hopefully he hopefully he responds.
Yes, of course. I have that much pull with Hiroki. I'm sure he couldn't be more eager to talk to somebody like me. I'm sure. Although we have spoken once or twice.
Oh yeah,
It's just
you went to the fan fest this time.
I didn't get I was invited to the in-person one this last year, but the one I actually got to be a part of was the virtual fan meetup,
Okay.
which was back in 22, I believe, maybe 21. And that was a lot of fun to just be able to like sit and talk to him and Tony for a while.
Nice.
More of like a talking head situation, but it's as close as I ever got to be to being a part of all of that. So it was nice.
Cool. Let's see. What else did I want to cover? Okay. So, basically, a lot of people have asked me, what am I doing with my channel going forward?
Hmm.
At the current time, I don't have any specific like plans for like I'm moving to this game, something like that. No plans really. I will say a lot of people keep asking me to try out Sword of Convaleria.
Yeah, they sure are.
Yeah, the people keep saying that. Is that a game that you're playing currently?
I've dabbled a little bit. I haven't even progressed to the point where I can like join a guild, which
Mm.
MK keeps asking me to join her guild, and I keep telling her I haven't progressed that far, and so then she gets mad at me. But it's okay. It's interesting. I mean, it's tactics. It's like hot take. It's a more fun version of what War of the Visions was supposed to be.
That's cool. I've considered trying it out. I don't know. I'm hesitant to jump into another mobile gotcha game just because after 8 years of this, it is a lot. Assuming you want to be competitive, usually you have to spend at least some money. Not always, but it helps. It certainly helps, and it's tempting.
So, for what it's worth, what I have been told, that game has a full 100-hour story that you do not have to do any gotcha whatsoever.
Mm, that'd be pretty cool.
And so in that case, it really is just a functional tactics game.
Okay. Have you played it enough to know if there's like challenging content? Are there like trial fights that are really hard? That's the kind of stuff I really enjoy. Like just like grinding for the sake of grinding, I'm like I could care less. I want like a challenge. Do you know if there's like really hard boss fights that I could look forward to in that game? Or have you
I
not
have
played? Have
not
not played
personally
enough?
progressed to that point, but
Okay.
I do hear people talking about something that sounds akin to like a tower.
Hmm.
So with, multi-level challenges, that's effectively as hard as you can make it in the moment.
Hmm. Okay.
So I can't necessarily speak for it at large. What I can say is that I have certainly heard that it's not nothing.
Okay. Well, it's definitely something I might consider trying out in a few weeks. Probably take a break for a few weeks, but
Yeah.
when I get bored, because I really enjoy Rare Breakfast, and not making videos for that is eventually going to get boring for me. So I'm going to look for
Hmm.
something to fill that time.
Sure.
So it might be that game. It might be a different game. I might still post some random single player games that I'm playing. Currently, I'm playing through Symphony of War. That's a little indie game on Steam, kind of like Fire Emblem, but like an indie version.
Oh,
It's fun,
sure,
cheap, it's fun. I
sure,
probably won't post videos of it though because it's like Fire Emblem. It's very slow combat.
sure,
It probably wouldn't be the most exciting to watch a video of, but it's fun to play. It's a single player game.
sure.
But
Are you going to keep up with the JP server at all?
oh yeah, I'm still playing the JP server. I've always been pretty casual on the JP. It fluctuates. Sometimes I go a little bit more hardcore on it, but I'm mostly pretty casual. The JP server did just get like a massive anniversary update, and shame on me for not having the news pulled up or even done. But I'll definitely still post more JP stuff. Um, I don't know. I've like always been pretty casual on the JP server, and I don't really like, are you going to full time JP now that Global's gone? Probably not. Just because although JP does have a lot of content, and I don't usually talk about it too much, the JP server also has a lot of grind that is a turnoff.
Mm-hmm.
So to play it like full time would be grindy, and I'm not sure if I really want to jump into that.
Sure. But if nothing else, it'll feed those of us who won't get to be a part of it. 'Cause didn't they just get a new news for like a Rain and Laswell? Like a
Yes,
new one?
yes,
Another new one?
yes. They came out yesterday, and they're pretty strong. So just like our EOS Esther, the new Rain has a 200% Omni Amplify.
Wow.
So, yeah. So JP is jumping up there. Of course, JP is 6 months into the future in terms of power creep.
Sure.
But it was just hilarious to see, like right after Esther, Rain or JP's very next unit has that 200 Omni Amplify. I'm like, wow, who saw that coming?
Certainly none of us.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
Oh, jeez.
But yeah, I'll definitely still post JP stuff, and assuming Rayhan's still going to do the fan translations for the story, I might continue to post the season 5 story on my channel for anyone that just hangs around and is still curious about the Brave Exvius story going forward.
Sure.
The anniversary stream said season 5 will start this winter, so I would assume like November, December. So we have to see.
I'll admit I'm a little jealous, but good for them.
And again, you could still play JP. Anyone could play JP. It is a hassle. Okay, so depending who you ask, they'll say the language barrier is not a problem. That's correct and incorrect at the same time. So if you've played Global, you can absolutely play JP with the language barrier. You can certainly manage. Now, just because you can manage does not mean it's not a problem. It is still a big irritation to play. I can do it, but it's annoying. I do have to still look up stuff with an auto-translate. Although I can, for the most part, go through and play. It's like I still have to look up some stuff. So you can play, but anyone that tells you, "Oh, it's no problem at all," they're lying to you. It's still a headache.
Yeah, I briefly made a JP account when Neos first came out, just because I wanted to roll for clouds over and over again, because it was fun and Global didn't have it yet. And I will say at the time, because so much of it was brand new, with like the items that you needed to upgrade Brave abilities and everything like that, I didn't know what any of that was. So I just pulled, and then I'd level up the unit, and I would go through and I would play the season recaps and get my 10,000 lapis, and then I'd pull again, and then until I was satisfied with it, and then I'd dabble a little. But when push came to shove, I didn't know what any of it was. I was getting by. There was a slight UI difference at the time. It was doable, but it wasn't necessarily fun. It wasn't like something you could just pick up and do quickly, for sure.
Exactly. Yep. Like today, the new patch. I installed the new anniversary patch. I logged in. I did my polls, and then I went to the crown stage, and it popped up the little message. You can only bring in Japanese these units, and I don't know what it says. So I have to grab my phone to look at the screen and translate that. So it's a headache. I actually closed the app. I'll do this later. I don't like doing this right now. So it is definitely more work to play the JP server if you don't speak Japanese. It's doable. Sure. It's doable. You can certainly manage, but it's not like just some players will say there's no problem whatsoever. That's not true.
Yeah, that can't possibly be true.
But, you know, this was definitely a fun video to like reminisce, nostalgia, talk about the game, the good, the bad, and I want to thank Barry for hanging out for 2 hours and 13 minutes. We've been here for a while. Wow.
Yeah, happy to do it. This was a good time. A good way to kind of coast off into the sunset here.
Mm-hmm. And I actually might do more of these just, you know, random discussion videos with other people from the community. I might not. I don't know. But yeah, again, thanks, Barry. Thanks all the Brave Exvius players for watching the channel, playing the game, making it happen, etc. And I'll definitely be posting more videos about what I don't know yet.
Sounds good.
All right. See you next time.